Get your questions answered by Deb and Jen.
Deb and Jen are at it again.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Deb and Jen Show. I'm Coach Deb.
And I'm Coach Jen.
And as you probably know by now, we take questions and talk about things related to marketing and sales and speaking and messaging, which essentially all of it has to do with how you sound, how you talk, whenever you're promoting your business or talking about your business, looking for new business, how you're monetizing. All of these things affect the income that you're bringing in and whether your business is successful or not. So we vary from week to week on these different subjects. And today, Jen had the bright idea of Jen, tell them.
I will tell you. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have a conversation about how Coach Deb and I got into speaking, sales, marketing, what we love about it, what we don't love about it, and how we knew it was a sweet spot for us. At what point in time did we know, hey, this is something that we love to do and we're good at it? Because I thought you might be able to see some of yourself in our story and maybe you learn a few tips about getting into the market if you want to do coaching or consulting and speaking. So I thought it'd be interesting to just hear a little bit of a backstory. And what do you think about that, Coach Deb?
Well, no, it's good. And in the context of conversion, because speaking is the number one way to convert people to want to do business with you. And why is that? Because it's the quickest way to establish the know, like, and trust factor, especially if you're selling high ticket. People want to get to know you, who you are. Do they feel aligned with you? Is there a synchronicity? Do they trust you? Do they think you're credible? And can you get the results for them that you've gotten for others? So what's your social cred? So that's a know, like, and trust factor. Seeing you live in person, well, certainly you're not going to be dead, but seeing you in person speaking is one of the quickest ways for people to get that know, like, and trust factor because they're having a real face-to-face experience. Now, that could be one-on-one at a networking event, or it could be speaking on stage. They both work. The second highest conversion is doing this virtually. So there's a little bit of dimension of you removed because of the screens, but they can still get a sense of who you are, what you're passionate about, how you can help them, etc. So in that context, tell your story, Jen. How'd you get started in speaking? And by the way, let's just say for everybody, people often think, oh, well, you were a born speaker. Yeah, no, not always. When you have a determination to use speaking as one of your marketing strategies, there are skills that you can learn. There are frameworks you can adopt that make you much more effective when speaking in front of your audience. And so, Jen, you go ahead and tell your story, then I'll do mine.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I graduated, it was 99 when I graduated with my chiropractic degree. I had seen speakers and always been enamored with them, like thinking, oh, they're so brave to go up in front of this audience. Mostly it was in graduate school for a speaker to get up and to speak in front of the room and to light up the room and to see people, be excited and have these, aha moments. And to see them be surrounded by people after they spoke, it just seemed awesome. And not just because they were getting the attention, but because the people afterwards, you'd hear them walk out into the hallway and talk about, oh my gosh, like, I cannot believe like that story that they told or that lesson that I learned. You could see people be lit up by it. So I didn't think about it being for me at that time. But when I look back now, I realized that that's when I started to just be enamored with it, to fall in love with the impact that speaking made. Then I joined Toastmasters at some point, maybe like a decade later. And I remember having to do the 2-minute intro, like the icebreaker. I don't know. I don't even remember what I talked about. I just remember thinking 2 minutes was like 3 days. I'm standing up there thinking like, when is the timer going to go off so I can stop talking? And fast forward, I ended up taking a live course on how to speak from stage. I was terrified. Like day one, they said, go up on the stage. We're going to ask you a question and you have to talk for 3 minutes about whatever we ask you. There were probably 60 people in the room. And the mentors actually said, okay, begin. We are now judging you. And they set a timer. I thought I was going to pass out. I'm like, I don't know what I said. I blacked out. I just kind of stumbled through whatever I could say, mumbly, and got off the stage. Then I learned the skill. Then I spent the next, I don't know, decade, the next couple of years to decade. It never really ends, the educational part of it, but I began learning how to speak and how to use vulnerability and humor and stories to connect with your audience. And so as I learned that skill, I fell more and more in love with it because I got to skip a lot of those impersonal steps, which some of you may be going through, of 50 million social media posts and emails and all the things that you need to do to build rapport. Speaking can do that in a matter of moments. And that's my short, like the basics of how I got into speaking. And since then, I've just continued to try to challenge myself, learn new things, and test it in the market and see what works. So that's the basics of how I got into it. And I would say for any speaker out there, if you're interested in using speaking, remember it is a learnable skill, and nobody starts out good or great. They definitely don't start out great. Some people may be more charismatic than others, but they definitely don't start out great. It's very, very learnable. And I'd be curious to hear, Coach Deb, like for me, when I think of you, I think you've been speaking your whole life in front of people, like formally. So tell me about that.
I have. That's true. However, I've done a lot of things to become better at speaking in front of groups, speaking on stage. You know, some people will say, well, I have no problem talking to one person or just a couple people, but if it's more than 3 or 4, I clam up, I get sweaty palms, I don't know what to do. You know, all of a sudden that becomes a big audience for them and they become terrified. So we all have our evolution of what we're learning, what we're working through. For me, my foray into public speaking was I was 16 years old, and our school board in the town where I grew up had changed the school week from 5 days to 4. And I thought that was horrible. And they changed our curriculum to silly things like death and dying, and they were kind of marginalizing the really important stuff like math and English and blah blah blah. So I went before the school board, and after interviewing graduating seniors from the year before, presented my data of how hard it was for them in college their first year because they missed out on some important classes. And I made the case for returning to 5 days a week instead of 4. Now they did the 4 because of overcrowding, right? The boomers were going through. And but still, I'm like, no, you can't compromise our education. You've got to come up with another solution. So it worked. They went back to 5 days a week. I wasn't popular either with the school board or with my classmates, for that matter. No one wanted to go back to 5 days, but they changed it. So that showed me the power of speaking to persuade an audience, right? If you line up your facts, if you do your research, if you show what the value of something, of thinking a different way or doing something a different way, then it sways people over to your perspective or your point of view, or to take the action that you want them to take. So that was my beginning. And I didn't speak a whole lot after that in public, maybe here and there for different groups that I was involved with, teenage groups or college groups. And then when I started working in corporate America, I worked for Xerox. Then I worked for MCI Communications in sales. And so when you do sales, old school sales, where you show up at the company, knock on the door and say, is Mr. Johnson here? Or I'd like to speak to Mr. Johnson. That's like a mini presentation. You got to say why you want to speak to Mr. Johnson. What's the point of you being there unannounced if you're doing cold calling? You talk about a high stress situation. You're jumping into the deep end of the pool, right? So you have to learn very quickly how to become effective at that if you want to make any money. And that was my next big training ground. Xerox at the time had a professional sales school, and you went down there for a week and they filmed you and they gave you feedback and they told you how you were doing. That was just another stepping stone along my journey. I did go to a couple Toastmasters, but the thing that really started to polish my skills is when I went to train the trainer courses, which were live in person 4 or 5 days. And you actually got up on stage and you were being critiqued by some pretty notables in the industry, like Richard Green, who is a speechwriter and speech coach for presidents and other high-level politicians. So they would be critiquing you, and you learn a lot, right? My hands were shaking. I was nervous, even though I'd been in front of a lot of audiences. I was like, oh, don't mess this up kind of thing. So I guess the moral of this story is no one steps out on stage perfect. We all have our horror stories. I remember being at a podium that was one of those little stand podiums with the thing to put your papers at the top.
Mhm.
And there was this little shelf underneath where I had the glass of water, right? So I knocked I was in the middle of presenting, and I knocked into the podium, and the glass tips forward towards me.
Oh,
and
no.
water all the way down me, my legs. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. We all
Did
have
you
our
acknowledge
horror.
it? I just have to know, did you acknowledge it and speak to it, or did you just try to pretend like it wasn't
Oh no,
happening?
you can't. You can't ever pretend like nothing happened.
Yeah, yeah.
You've got to acknowledge it and go, well, I guess I needed to be hydrated or whatever you come up with. You have to speak to it, right?
Yeah.
But we all have these at the time, which are horror stories, but which now are funny stories, right?
Mhm.
A famous speaker in the National Speakers Association, Patricia Fripp, was presenting to a large audience, and she got really close to the edge of the stage and wasn't paying attention and actually fell off
Oh my gosh.
the floor. And she got right up and she said, I'll now take questions from the floor.
Right. I
And
just in my mind, I'm like, did Fripp turn into Trip at some point? There might have been
exactly,
there.
exactly.
Yeah.
But she's a professional, and
Mhm.
she's been doing this for 20 years. We all fumble, but that's okay, because here's the secret. No one wants to work with perfect. They want to work with real.
Mhm.
So we don't want to step out on stage thinking we have to be perfect. We want to be relatable. We want to be real. We want to share our humanity and our passions. And that doesn't always come off perfectly. In fact, it shouldn't, right? We want people to be able to lean in and say, tell me more. That's interesting. So foibles and all, warts and all, we step out on stage and do our best. And the thing that most recently I have anchored for my own awareness is that people don't want to work with perfect. They just really don't. They want to work with someone who gets them, who understands them, and they don't want to work with people who they think are on a pedestal of some kind as being superior. So yeah, it's the best way to get out there in front of your audience, to get them to know and like and trust, as we stated at the beginning. You got any horror stories that you had to overcome?
You know what? I actually worked for MCI, but I was like in the call center. When you were sharing your story, I realized that my very first job, like I started out in gym sales, like how to sell gym memberships. I worked at a gym. And so I'm like 16, 17 years old, and these people are coming in and they want to join this. It was called Nautilus Super Fitness Center. And I had to give them the tour and then walk them through the packages. And I'm 17, 16, 17. What do I know? I'm just saying whatever the guy told me to say. But I liked it. Like I liked being in the gym, and I found that I liked that conversation about what do they like? What don't they like? What are they looking for? So then I went on and I worked for MCI in the call center. And so that was cold calling. That's like, if anybody remembers back in the day, your phone rings and it's a credit card company saying like, hello, Mrs. Jones, I'm calling you from Visa or from American Express. And I'm really calling from Iowa City, Iowa, University of Iowa. They had this huge warehouse of a room with all the cubicles like you would imagine. And I had a big fat binder flip through the script, as I'm reading it, like, oh, wait, got to flip 2 pages forward because they said they're not interested. Like, how do I get to that objection? I hated it. I absolutely hated it, to be honest with you. At the same time, I learned so much from it. So, I remember calling the West Coast versus the East Coast. Have you been there, Coach Deborah? Like the West Coast, LA, it's kind of like, hey, hi, how's it going? East Coast is like, why are you calling me? What's going on? Like, I don't know what are you calling me for? And then they'd hang up on you. So you had to talk 4 times as fast. If you're talking to the East Coast, get to the point. Hopefully they wouldn't hang up on you. And then the phone would just dial for you again and dial for you again. And the beauty,
dialing for dollars, dialing for
exactly. And then I waited tables, kind of the same thing, like selling gym memberships, selling, I don't know, credit card offers. I think it's predominantly, sometimes we sold vacation packages through MCI. And then I waited tables. So all 3 of those were sales positions, whether they were looked at directly as sales or not. And what I learned from that, I think that the benefit is how to meet people where they were at, how to connect and build rapport quickly, like fast, 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 so that you wouldn't get hung up on, you wouldn't be yelled at. Maybe you'd make some money, you'd get a good tip, or you wouldn't get a tip. It was rapid fire, learning how to build rapport and connect. And when you draw that back to speaking on a stage, most of you have probably experienced a speaker that you just didn't feel them. You could tell they were kind of in their own head. They were in their own bubble. They were, going through the motions and reading a script of some sort that they had memorized, but they weren't emoting. They weren't like relatable.
Yeah.
And is one of the best skills. I think you can mess up your framework in a talk. You can mess up the ending. But when people like you, to what Coach Deb was saying, like when they like you and they feel connected to you, they don't either notice or care if they do notice. They're like cheering for you. So
Right.
the ability to be able to build quick rapport is such a fantastic skill set, and not just for speaking, but for sales as well and marketing. So horror stories, I haven't fallen off a stage. I've definitely blacked out where I'm not sure what I'm saying and I just want it to be over. That's been a long time ago. I would say
the whole dialing for dollars.
yeah.
I think everybody, and I've said this to my own son, should work in a restaurant or some service industry because it teaches you how to connect with people.
Yes.
And that's the skill you bring to the stage. Can you connect with one person? Because if you can connect with one person in your audience, you can connect to the whole audience, right? You just move attention from one side to the other side and connect with one person. You're having a conversation. The ability to have a conversation is one of the most important life skills that you can learn, or that you can, step up your game. I just wanted to say one thing, like you started with the dialing for dollars. I was even a few notches below that when I started with MCI.
What's below that?
I was handing out coupons at the bottom of the escalator in a department store. You want some free phone calls? Do you want some free phone calls? Because back then, remember, you had to pay for all your long distance calls each time you called long distance. So I would be handing out coupons to people for free phone calls. That's like the bottom of the barrel. That's where you
get $1. You're gonna get $1 of free phone calls if you just take this coupon.
Yeah, no, I think it was $5. But anyway, and then I moved up to what you were doing, dialing for dollars. And eventually I made my way up to handling Fortune 100 Fortune 100 company accounts in Boston. But, that's a trajectory. And I think sometimes people hesitate to get into speaking, well, for a couple of reasons. They don't think they're good at it. But the only way to get good at it, ironically, is to do it, to learn from it. But if you've ever been in sales, or you've ever been in a service industry where you have to establish and connect with people, that's great training ground. So you could make it a practice. How about this? Of just practicing connecting with people. Connect with them in a line at a supermarket if you're both waiting in line. I will do that. Like, how long have you been waiting for this commuter bus? Recently I had to wait for a commuter bus to go somewhere, and you get some information and where you're traveling from, and you can just start up a conversation. Now you might be saying to yourself, but I don't like doing that. Okay, but you know what? Then maybe speaking isn't for you. Because
you have to say it in that voice too. I don't like doing that.
Exactly. No, I don't like. I had somebody. I have a client right now who consistently reminds me that I don't like people.
But I do want people to give me a lot of money.
Yeah, but I don't like them. Okay, look, that's not the best attitude to have on the stage, right? Even if it's a stage of one, you can't say, I don't like people, because those people are going to become your clients, right? So you might want to reevaluate, I don't know what business you're in. Like, is this the right career path for me? Or do you want to just go be a numbers cruncher somewhere and have someone else pay you and give the work to you? Okay, that's a legit question to ask yourself. But if you are dedicated to being an entrepreneur, striking out on your own, you don't have to like people, but you do have to talk to them.
Right, because you're going to be solving their problems. Remember that, of course, without going too deep into messaging. That's what people pay you for. Like, I have a problem, I need a solution. Oh, you can help me? I'll give you some money and you can help me solve it. It's not that complicated, actually. But you might want to change that story.
Have you ever tried to make
What's that?
Have you ever worked like tried at a hotel reservation desk? You're there, and some of the people there act like they're doing you a favor.
Oh my gosh.
They
Like
interact
half
with
of
you.
the time, I think.
Yeah, and you think to yourself, geez, either they hate their job or they hate me or they hate people in general, but like, why are they doing this? You don't want to be that person. You want to be the person that you wish was your nurse after surgery. Like, oh, honey, how are you? Everything going okay? Is there any way I can help you in this?
The
Yeah.
good nurse, not the nurse that's like, oh my gosh, I got 50 people. Why are you bothering
Taps the
me?
needle in and says, we're done. Yeah. Or wakes you up in the middle of the night and says, take these meds, whatever it is. No,
Yeah.
you don't want to be that surly, bossy kind of person. You have to be service oriented when you're speaking. You have to be thinking of the needs and problems and challenges of others and be invested in solving them. Like Jen said, what problems can you solve for them? And if that's not your natural orientation, either have it become it, like move in that direction, or like I said, reevaluate why you're actually in business.
Yeah, and it's okay to have a job. I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a job, working for somebody else, if that's your thing. In the entrepreneurial world, I mean, it's a sexy sell for like, be your own entrepreneur, be your own business person, sell your own stuff.
Yeah, be your own boss.
But some people pick that and they really don't want it. They do it because maybe they don't like their job or they're not happy on the inside and they're looking for a way to feel happy. Well, honestly, like, if you don't want to talk to people, you don't want to sell, you don't want to ask for money, then it's going to be pretty hard to be your own boss, frankly, or build your own business. And secondarily, I think you can still only be as happy on the outside as you are on the inside. So lovingly, like self-development, find what you're passionate about, like do a personal inventory as well, because even if you show up with the best technique, the best sales, the best audience, the best whatever, people are going to feel you. What do they say? 80% or more of communication is nonverbal, and they'll feel you. And if you're nervous, that's one thing. But if you literally hate what you're doing, they're going to feel that too. So it doesn't matter how good your technique is. Sometimes, well, actually, inner work is a constant if you want to grow as a human being and be more impactful and wealthier. Inner work, it can't be avoided. It can't. You can't be the same person a decade later and have a different result.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. In fact, probably a good mantra for speakers is I just forgot my quote. Oh, yeah, the unexamined life is not worth living. And what that really means is, do we stop and take stock of who we're being, how we're acting, acting toward ourselves, towards others, how we think, how we express ourselves, the energetic vibe that people get when they interact with us. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it neutral? And really taking stock on a frequent basis, a regular basis, should be the hallmark of anybody in business, right? Gee, I'm not really effective at these sales conversations. I wonder why. What's wrong with people should not be the question.
Right. Right. People are so annoying. What's wrong with them? Why won't they buy my stuff?
Exactly. The question should be, where can I improve? And the same with the stage. Let's say you present something on the stage, no one takes your offer. I have a funny story about this. I don't think I've told it on the show yet, but I'm going to tell it now. My husband and I were at an event where several people were selling one after the other, selling their different services, their different offers. And this one woman got up and she did her whole thing, spoke for like 45 minutes, and she had an offer at the end. And so she said, okay, go to the back of the room, go ahead and sign up, whatever, verbiage, something along those lines. No one moved. Not a single person got up. So she looks out at the audience and she says, what's the matter? Why isn't anybody buying? Didn't you like my presentation? Raise your hand if you like my presentation. Several people raised their hand. And she said, then why aren't you buying? And the what's wrong with you tone of voice.
And I'm sure that just made everyone get up and say, oh, I want to give this woman so much of my money.
Oh, you know what? You've just kind of flipped the switch for me. Let me run back and give you my $5.
Right. I want to hang out with you. Yeah.
Oh, bad moment. It's just like, oh, people shrinking down in their chairs. Yeah, not a good scene. Okay. So
wait, I want to tell one. So I might have told this one. We might have told this way back at the beginning, or maybe show 76 or something of the sort. Is I worked at an event in the last couple of years where the person spent about $250,000 to host a live event, like flying staff in, hotels, food, like videographer, sound guy, the whole get up. And it's a 3-day event. I'm on her sales team. We won't go deep into that, but I'm on her sales team. And so I'm watching from the back of the room as she gets closer to making an overt offer, right? Like, okay, here's the crescendo of buy my stuff, join my program, let me give you this transformation. And she says to the room, raise your hand if you already know that you're 100% no, and you don't want to move forward. And I did that. I'm like, I might have started mumbling, oh no, please, no, 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 no. So nobody raises their hand at first because they don't want to be rude. And she's like, no, seriously, like if you know that you're a no, actually don't raise your hand. Just get up, gather your things, and you can just head out into the hallway. Well, imagine what that did for the awkwardness in the room, the social proof of like putting people on the spot to have to get up and pack their things. Now, anyone that might have been interested is like, has to sit and wait and watch person after person get up, grab all their stuff under their chair, get their coffee cup and their duffel bag and their blankets and put their shoes back on and walk out the door. And the door keeps opening and closing while this person stands at the front of the room and waits for all the no's to leave the room. There's so many morals to this story, but from a speaking standpoint, I mean, it's learnable, but you also have to do things in the right order. So my takeaway from this for you is don't spend a bunch of money doing things that aren't right for where you're at right now. Learn how to speak. Learn how to make an offer, learn how to connect with your audience before you jump ahead and say, oh, I'm going to hold a big retreat, or I'm going to hold a big event, or I'm going to like do anything other than learning the skill set to speaking and making an offer and connecting with your audience. It's crucial. So this woman is still-ish in business, but I mean, that was a massive financial hit for her business because she skipped the essential steps in learning how to deliver her offer. Yeah. And it was horrific to watch.
Yeah. And this falls, it sounds to me like it falls into the category. Did she ever self-reflect and figure out what went wrong?
Yes, but she didn't ask for coaching around it. So if she were to do it again right now, I would be very surprised if she did it differently. That's what I would say about it, because she didn't go back and look at the structure. She kept saying, I don't know why nobody bought. What did my team do wrong? What was wrong in the room, etc., rather than saying, you know what, I should have learned the structure before I invested, 6 figures in. It looked good from the outside, right? If you came up to someone and said, hey, I had an event with 60 people at it at a hotel and a team flew in, and I mean, it looked good, but the structure, the foundation was not there. And actually the backstory that I actually recommended 8 months before that she not do this. I'm like, you got to get your offer down. You need to get your messaging down. You need to get your delivery down before you invest this much money. It's one of the most risky ways, I think, to grow your business, to host a big live event if you haven't taken the training to be sure that your message and your offer are spot on, that they match what your audience wants and it speaks to them where they're at. Once you've got that, and it's very learnable, you have to get the training, learn how to do it. Then it makes sense to say, great, okay, I know that when I speak and when I make my offer that 20% or 30% of the room will say yes. Now you can go on and spend, if you want to spend the big bucks. But man, it's a quick way to lose cash, especially with, there's virtual options these days. So anyway, it was just really highlighted the necessity of learning structure and learning how to speak before jumping ahead into something bigger and expensive.
Yeah. So we're kind of at the end of the time here. So let's try to sum up the points we covered, which is most importantly, speaking is a learnable skill. Public speaking, speaking on stages, speaking and networking events, it's a learnable skill. Being able to self-reflect and see where things are working or not working is something that should be a regular practice. And that's best done with a coach, somebody that you trust who can see things that you can't see. It's really hard to read the label from inside the jar, as another coach friend we have would say. And that's true because we're so close to things, we sometimes can't see them. taking time to improve where you think you maybe fell down in some places or didn't have the results you were looking for. Getting feedback and then buffing up your skills. Making a practice of talking with people, getting to know people, finding out what makes people tick. How can you become more relatable? Letting go of your, there's a phrase I've used many times before, which is apropos here, which is be more interesting. No, excuse me, be more interested than interesting. Like listen more, lean in, learn about people. It'll go a long way to helping you be more relatable on stage. And you might have some great stories to tell too, in the process of doing that. So Jen, is there anything I left out?
I'm going to say something funny is that if all else fails, like try to put yourself in a position where you have to learn the skills. And I'm not telling you to go wait tables, but I'm not telling you to do that either. Like put yourself, whether that's Toastmasters, whether it's taking a training, whether it's just, if you won't naturally go out and talk to strangers in a grocery store line, well, hey, maybe you could baby step into it, come up with a question, say, all right, I'm going to ask one person a question today, a stranger. And you'll find that it really isn't so terrible. Even if it feels awkward, you can get better at it. So putting yourself in a situation where perhaps you take a training and part of that training, just like I had experiences where you get on the stage and you actually speak and you try, even if it's scripted, like create opportunities to learn the skill of communication and building rapport. They're everywhere.
You know what a great way to do that without working at McDonald's is being a what do you call those people that show you around museums, or the people that work for theaters and greet people and talk about the show or whatever. But in other words, you have to interface with people and establish rapport and welcome them. You could do that. What's the word?
Like just an usher, you mean? Or
Like
I mean,
an usher, but museums, they're called something specific. I just can't think of what the word is right now. But anyway, that's a great way to any place you can volunteer, like an art museum, a kids theater program, and greet people and relate to people. Great learning opportunities.
Yeah.
All right, we got to sign off because we're a little bit over, but we'll be, of course, sharing more tips about speaking and getting better at speaking as we go along. So any final
we'll see you in a week. If you have questions, submit them. It's questions@thedebandjenshow.com. And we'll look forward to answering those for you, and we'll bring some more goodness next week.
Yeah, maybe we'll play a video of something that didn't work so well from stage or something that works incredibly well from stage so you can
Like that.
firsthand experience. That'd be fun. All right, bye for now, everyone.